Thanks for joining the podcast. It's always great to chat with you and kind of go over various topics. But I want to do something a little bit different, for this is that like I feel like I'm always like so privileged. I get to like talk to like so many different folks, that not a lot of people, hear, that are in the industry or hear from that are in the industry. So we're gonna like kind of let them, kind of open up that window for everyone. So why don't we start a little bit about kind of your career, your background? Obviously, you work at Fidelity now, and you've been in kind of IT, for a long time. But why don't you just give everyone a little bit of an idea of what that journey has been like over the last couple of decades?
Ooh, last couple of decades. Well, it would have started when I was fished out of one company to go to another company. I
Hmm.
was just exploring salaries and found out that where I was at, you know, was really underpaid. And this was one of those headhunting services. So, of course, they're going to say all that stuff and tell you all these things. But it ended up being a great deal, almost doubled salary, get to do similar things, an expanded role. And that was my first venture into management.
Hmm.
And this was a course on the technical side because we were deep into Java at that point in time. And it was a smaller team for a financial company. I know, imagine that, me at a
Yeah.
financial company. But we had a blast. We had a lot of fun. This was the first time taking an approach of small sets of work. This was waterfall back then, but we had monthly releases to production. So it
Hmm.
was my first venture into doing things slightly different and in growing in that way.
Hmm.
And I learned a lot about people, a lot about working within large organizations and how important people are in
Yeah.
general.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that transitioned over to discovering where I'm at today through many different adventures of the previous place.
Yeah.
Some of the adventures were compliance, governance, networking infrastructure, server infrastructure, architecture. You kind of name it. I was the troubleshooter there. So if there was an issue somewhere, I would go in and fix it and optimize it and make it better, then go on to the next thing. And so,
Uh,
of course, that's always a lot of fun. But
yeah.
I
You were the
didn't,
ninja. You were the tech ninja.
I don't know about that, but it was a lot of fun. And I got
Yeah.
to meet a lot of people, got to help in a lot of different areas. And in general, just a great grooming to have a very wide knowledge base over quite a
Hmm.
few different areas. But the emphasis was always in technology. Now,
Yeah.
how I was different is I would always put the emphasis on people with the technology being the background. So I
Hmm.
would kind of go both directions. I had some really good people that were helping me in making that transition to making the emphasis on people.
Yeah.
Then in the latest role, I've been through several roles in the latest company. They brought me over as an architect, leading a group of people, and that transitioned into multiple roles, being on the fast track for a while. But honestly, the stress and the work of being on the fast track, I was told I was going to be the next CTO, the next CIO, and all of
Hmm.
these things. But the hours putting in, the lack of family time, all of
Hmm.
those things put together, I reassessed myself and I didn't like the way I was going.
Yeah.
So I made a conscious decision to make a change and go into cloud architecture. Imagine that,
Yeah.
where I'm at
Oh yeah.
today. And this was quite a while
It almost
ago.
sounds like a downgrade. You know?
It,
Hey, you're going to be the CTO. You're going to be the CIO. All right, no, I'm going to do cloud architecture.
it was the best thing I ever did. And so, the
Oh yeah,
stress was
especially at the
gone.
time. Yeah.
Every day is a blast and a lot of fun. I get to emphasize on all of the great things that I loved about all the things in all the previous different roles, and I get to help people nonstop.
Hmm.
So for
Awesome.
me, and this was the best move I ever did and the most fulfilling. And with the transitions over time, as I learned more and more, in the beginning, of course, we didn't know about the cloud any more than anyone else. We were growing and learning as we went. But we had a really different approach. We had a risk averse approach
Mm.
where we would go in and analyze every individual service from a cloud provider to understand the merits of it, from a security point of view, from a functionality point of view. And
Yeah.
if it didn't meet our core requirements, it just wasn't allowed. So
Mm.
that way we could have safety as we were going to the cloud. And I won't
Yeah.
mention the vendors, but the first CSP we looked at, it didn't have what we needed from a resiliency point of view. And
Mm.
so they were scrapped, and we went to another vendor as our primary vendor.
Yeah.
We're now in a mode where we're 70%, 30% between a couple different vendors and always evaluating new vendors.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like an abbreviated version of the fun that I've been having for the past couple decades.
Yeah, well, that's really what a great journey. It's like a lot of time spent on-prem, and then also then kind of transition and focused on the cloud, like when the cloud became really popular. So I got to ask, like, maybe one question on that journey is that a lot of companies struggle with IT as a cost center versus like IT as kind of really kind of a business driver, right? A digital enabler. Um, when did you see that shift start to happen away from kind of cost center into not exactly a business unit, but being either closer to business units or really just being part of the revenue generation discussion?
That is a transition that started maybe a decade ago
Hmm.
and will take years to completely saturate, very large companies.
Mm.
Because every part of a company will tend to move at a different pace because they have different strategies and different things they're starting to achieve. But
Yeah.
pockets that recognized it first, of course, they reap the benefits. And then other people see that, and it creates a domino effect of other groups also wanting to get on board. Now, when you combine that with making things easier for teams, easier to make the transitions, easier to make the changes,
Mm.
then you can get even more people on board. The business units, they have this yearly game that they play. They have the business outcomes that they need to achieve.
Yeah.
But then there are technical things that us technologists that we want them to enable because we know it'll help them. But how do you tell that story? How do you tell
Mm.
a story about how by doing these things it's going to make life easier for them? Well, if we integrate their goals and what they're trying to achieve each year with the stories we're telling so that they're really one story instead of decoupled stories, then
Hmm.
you have much better success. And we can do that by understanding the business goals and business strategies, and then fitting the things that we're working on, the things we're standardizing, the things we're automating, so it fits into those business goals. With that approach, we've had much better buy-in because then all you're doing, you're seeing the path they want to go, and then you're
Yeah.
making it easier for them to achieve the same path. It's just doing it with the technology, infrastructure, and all the security setups that you need them to take in a much faster way.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. That's a really interesting kind of approach. It's an organizational approach and a real partnership approach between kind of IT and business units, so that you're part of their success. In a in an ingrained kind of sticky way. So that's yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Very good. So one more quick question. On the whole journey thing. Any particular mentors or people you've seen in the industry or that you worked with that were really influential in your career?
Oh, there's quite a few, Nick.
There always are. It's like, but they're the
Oh,
best. It's like,
if we go back a really long ways, some of them were the most influential. My first mentor taught me that I can pretty much do anything, just organize, talk to people, and, plan for success, and things tend to happen.
Mm.
There was a president of one of the companies that I worked at, and he was kind of my idol. The reason being, he's a president of a company and he still made the time to coach his boys in baseball. And I thought,
Yeah.
president
Mm.
can do that. I can
Mm.
do that. And
Yeah.
so he had a cot in his office. So he would do the coaching he needed to do. Then he would do what he needed to do afterwards for work. So I
Mm.
modeled my family life after that.
Yeah.
I coached my boys for more than a decade in basketball and soccer, going up to select high levels of soccer. So it was an amazing experience. I think I got more out of it than they did. I never realized that, but it was an amazing experience. So I owe it all to that person, just showing the way that it is possible, at least to a lot of late nights, but
Yeah.
well worth it. And
How awesome.
then
What a great role model that is. Yeah, go
that
ahead.
he changed, my life the most in the most positive way.
Mm.
And then, of course, there's always the mentors that help you with the people skills, how important people are, putting people first.
Mm.
Um, in a previous company, had a mentor that was his concentration, so he helped me with that. I was originally way too technical, Nick.
Mm.
That's why I had to go back for the MBA years ago to kind of blend that out and
Yeah.
take away all the sharp edges and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So he was amazing helping me on that path. And then, of course, I've had technical mentors the whole way to help with
Yeah.
different things along the path.
Yeah, the people part of that, especially in large organizations, are really fundamental. When I started my career, I was actually really lucky. I went from college, finishing up undergrad, to go to work for Digital Equipment Corporation,
Hmm.
and I got enrolled into a 2-year internship program, and
Hmm.
we met once a week, sometimes twice a week, and it was like, so there were classes, and they had like, kind of a whole, kind of curriculum, going on. And I thought, the biggest thing that they were teaching us is really, one, how to sell ideas, how to communicate, how to not so much get along, with people, but how to respect everyone, that you're working with, and you know, and just how to kind of make friends and influence people, in a positive way, in a real positive
Yeah.
way, where everyone kind of benefits. And that was really, that was a great experience for those kind of 2 years there. It really kind
Hmm.
of shaped, how I, you know, work with people, and my view of not so much the industry, but really kind of my view of organizations, and how you work within organizations. So,
Yep.
okay, let's see. I did want to shift a little bit. Like, you've always been like, healthy, and so kind of vibrant. I wanted to ask, like, hey, what's your approach? Like, how do you stay so healthy? And what's your secrets?
Nick, I think we would need a whole separate discussion for that, but I'll go
Yeah,
over some of the light things.
yeah,
First, I'm a biohacker. So, what that
yeah,
means is that I monitor my health in very low level methods to understand where I'm at and
mm,
how to adjust and optimize. So, every 3 to 4 months, I have blood drawn and they check 43 different markers.
yeah,
And according to what I see on those markers, I will change what I eat, I'll change how I work out, and I'll, just adjust things. So it's a constant optimization. And I've been doing this for several years now. I'm actually using two different services
yeah,
for this because each of them provides something different.
yeah,
But, and of course, probably read about 10 or 15 different books on biohacking. And there
yeah,
are several different podcasters that I listen to on this that have been very helpful in the journey. Now, the first one isn't a biohacker, but he's the first one that introduced me to some of the others, Joe Rogan. There's
yeah,
so many good people on Joe Rogan. I've read so many books from people he's talked to. And one of the people from there was Ben Greenfield. And Ben
yeah,
Greenfield is a biohacker, sometimes a little on the fringe, but he always has these great ideas. And he's got this monstrous book about yay thick. that will teach you a lot of different things about how to stay healthy. And it's from a longevity point of view,
yeah,
staying healthy. And then there's another one, Huberman. Huberman has a fantastic, very up to date, scientifically based podcast. So all
yeah.
of his information is talking about the latest studies that come out. And
Hmm.
he'll be talking about lots of different things to do with health, with mental health, physical health, so quite a variety of different things. And then there's another one, David Sinclair. He's another scientist,
Yeah,
and he has a series of podcasts, and they go really deep, and they'll go into the specific things that you need to take to adjust different parts for longevity. His
yeah,
specialty as a scientist is longevity.
yeah,
And so, Nick, you already know I go on hikes each week. I work
yeah,
out every day. I do Tabata. I do HIIT. I do
yeah,
those for the keep the mitochondria, fresh,
yeah,
energized, and going. I do the middle of the road aerobics. One of my apps tracks what I do. I do about over 400 minutes of that aerobic activity a week is my average.
yeah,
And of course, the old watch tells you way more things than you probably need to know about yourself.
yeah,
But I track it and adjust with it. And what I've recently added, maybe within the last 6 to 8 months, is also meditating. So usually
mm,
morning and nightly meditation in order to help with all of these things holistically. Because I try and not just do the physical, but do the mental and the spiritual aspects of it also.
yeah. Yeah, those are really good. Like, I'm a JRE, fan, Uberman fan, as well. I've gotten really plugged into Peter Attia, in
Yeah.
his book, and so yeah, it's so funny, Peter. I think or Mick. It seems like so many of us are plugged into biomarkers, right
Mhm.
now,
Yep.
and so like I've been focused on lipids, and in particular ApoB, and kind of making sure that my ApoB levels are really low, like between 25 and 40 is kind of like what I'm aiming for, there. Um, Also, it's like I've just started the process, of quarterly kind of blood analysis and looking at
Mhm.
that to guide supplementation. So like kind of vitamin D and K2 and B3 and folic. It's those were the ones I was kind of a little deficient in, but like so I didn't I'm just starting kind of on that journey of biomarkers. I've always been um, exercising like all the time. Like I probably work out at least 6 times a week, maybe not always, like 5, 6 times a week, and I cycle a lot. I bike a lot, so that's, kind of get my heart rate, up. But anyway, I'm getting more into like I've always done weight training, but I'm starting to actually shift a little bit more towards weight training, and a little bit less towards vigorous, cardio. A little bit more zone 2 cardio, and just more weight training as well. So it's just kind of keep healthy.
It's a lifetime thing, and it's so much fun. And you see the results, and that is just energizing to do more.
Yeah,
And so it's just it's domino effect of,
yeah,
just helping yourself to be healthy.
yeah. I think like all of us IT guys, we have an affinity for numbers and for metrics, and so the
Mhm.
biomarkers are a natural tendency,
Yeah.
for everyone to start, going towards. So that was fascinating. I didn't know, that you were, kind of into whole biohacking and really kind of looking at that stuff. So that was actually fascinating. That was great to hear. Um, but I think I want to start shifting us a little bit, back towards industry stuff. We've had like 2023 was a kind of a contraction year, right? For tech, especially like in the cloud, in terms of like the growth rates really kind of got cut in half from what they were projected like during the pandemic. But so what did you walk away with 2023? Like what was salient? What kind of stuck out, that happened either in 2023 or maybe just overall trends that happened in 2023 that are now kind of going to reshape this new year that we're into?
A couple things. And Nick, we have such exposure to what different companies are doing in the market that we have a pretty good perspective on the good things going on and the bad things going on. And unfortunately, many companies, when they first go into something like the cloud, they do a model that tends to cost them more than what they're doing, on site today. And, that's the lift and shift model where you just move it over. And the companies that assess things and take the time to refactor and adjust, then they have a much better experience. Things are usually faster and less expensive. Now, why does that matter for 2023? When people are tightening their belts, then they can't take the hit of an extra expense. So we'll probably see a couple different things. The people that were doing it the non-optimal way, we're going to see them really slow down because they can't afford to continue, spending that much money. But the people that take that measured approach, that identify the areas where they really can help themselves, the company, and the customers by making the move, then they'll accelerate. And just so that they can get those, savings even faster to help their bottom line. So I think we're going to see a big shift, and you're going to be able to identify the companies, what group they land in. Do they have a really good plan that's going to allow them to go to the cloud, save money, be secure, and meet all of their business needs? Or do they need to contract? And do they need to stay on site more and weather the storm before they're able to go? Now, of course, it's never just that simple. There are so many other things that can help both sides of the equation in order to cut the costs and to make things a little bit more streamlined. I don't know if you want to touch on any of those details.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking. So I think it's the way I process that is that, hey, it's really all about making sure that when you're kind of moving into kind of a new domain, whether that's cloud or whatever, it's that you really kind of do the diligence and make sure like you have the outcome that you're looking for, or basically you go in with an outcome that you're desiring, and make sure that that delivers. And yeah, there was a lot of folks who made big mistakes around. They thought they can kind of just lift and shift, and that clearly you had an old architecture, legacy architecture, and trying to put it into like a cloud-based architecture, a native cloud. It just didn't work. I totally get that. And so I think those who kind of invested in both the skill sets that are required, and that's really, I think, mostly important. I think that's kind of number one, right? If you had the skills and you knew that either you had a refactor or just new apps were kind of written in cloud native, what have you, then you probably had a better experience than those who were just trying to kind of thinking knee-jerk reaction is that oh, cloud cheaper, oh, I should do that and go there, and they realize it doesn't. It's like if you do it, if you don't do it right, so all right, so I think what you're saying is that really came home to roost in 2023. It's like it was almost like Warren Buffett has a really great line, like who's swimming naked when the tide goes out, and so like the tide went out and like a lot of folks were freaking naked out there. So I think that's maybe the lesson in 2023. Anything else? Any other kind of major observations, whether that's from the vendor community or really from like the well, obviously we both participate in knowing that you're one of the brain trust and the leadership. So it's anything that you see from from there.
To add on one more thing to the companies, in a large company, they should be helping people more. The companies that go to the trouble of standardizing things, of automating, of creating core platforms, core and common deployment vehicles, then you just remove so much toil from developers that life gets a ton easier. And I know medium and small companies can't always do that. But large companies that take those steps, you've now streamlined that path for people to do whatever it is you want them to do. And developers like the streamlined path. 80% of them will usually take that path. Now, The great thing, now I'm going to skip over to the vendor community.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're really lucky where I'm at, a very large company. We have handwritten so many things to automate, standardize, and make our life easier in doing the things we do. But the truth is that for people that are starting today, there are now vendor solutions that do that. If you
Mm.
need to automate your networking infrastructure, there are vendors that will help with that automation so you don't have to hand code all this stuff.
Yeah.
If you're deploying to multiple CSPs, you have help from ONUG and vendors to help automate that, standardize it in order to eliminate, 60, 70% probably of the fun of coding things individually. And so for people that are starting now or people that weren't heavy into it before, this is a great time. There are
Mm.
so many tools and automated ways to do things now. The things that we had to hand code and learn the hard way, now people can use automated tools to start fresh. So it
Yeah.
really is an exciting time for people moving.
Yeah, that's really such a great point. Yeah, especially like on kind of the network configuration, change management, orchestration. Like there are so many companies that built their own spaceship, to do that, and and now the cost of maintaining that is huge. So it's like, um, I won't name names. We know a whole bunch of companies that, that's the path that they went down. And, and now you're right. There's at least, 4 or 5 really good companies that you could just buy a platform, buy a package, and you can automate that. And they'll obviously invest in the feature roll up and the feature enhancements like over time. That's really insightful, point. I kind of took it for granted. I haven't really just thought about that.
I think 2024 and 25 will be a reevaluation of all the people that started in the cloud before these things existed. They'll be
Mm.
looking at how many people it takes to maintain them
Yeah.
versus the cost of using the automated solutions that exist on the market now.
Mm.
We didn't have a choice when we started. If you want to go and you want to be standardized and safe, you had to do it yourself. But now
Mm.
there's a choice.
Yeah.
So I think upcoming times will be very interesting and transitionary as people get away from their hand-coded solutions into vendor solutions.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, that's a great observation. What about going into 2024? What do you kind of see, for the year?
We're still in the contraction mode where in an industry as a whole, you've seen, last year people slowed down in hiring or stopped completely. Some companies have had layoffs. And so in the news, you see all these crazy things going on.
Mm.
And these things are always short term. And so, I'm an optimist. So
Mm.
I'm hopeful that in the middle of next year, things turn around again.
Mm.
Everybody will start hiring again. Things will brighten up for everybody and we'll go back to addressing, all the different technology things across all of industry. There are
Mm.
pockets of places that didn't stop. They feel it's the right thing to do. So you continue down the path of making improvements. I'm lucky to be at one of those places where we're
Mm.
continuing the path. I know not everybody's that lucky though. So
Yeah.
hopefully in the middle of the year, everybody's that lucky. Things are open. People are reassessing and people are, filling the gaps, in their infrastructure with the people, with all the different services they use. So everybody can start optimizing again.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually that's another great observation. It seems like obviously it's industry sector specific. In the financials, a lot of the financials have been having reduction in forces, like on the order of like 10,000, or so.
Mhm.
And what's interesting about it this time, it's like underreported. Like Citigroup might be the only one that's really been kind of out front, in that. But a lot of them, have done some big reduction in forces, and it also like seems that what's happening in the financials is that there is a wholesale review of workflows um, to support various different revenue streams and to streamline them and to automate that. So
Yeah.
That seems to be a kind of a major kind of industry initiative that all of the large banks are kind of going through right now. And so you have to be in the know to kind of know that that's what's going on, but so it's I think that I'm not sure if you were alluding to the financial sector, but it's like that one sector in particular is kind of going through. I think they're really just getting ready, for to make their businesses leaner and more automated, and so that they can innovate more. That's
Hmm.
and that's always kind of a Picasso kind of moment, right? It's like every act of creation is also an act of destruction, so, that's kind of what's going on, in that sector. And I'm sure it's happening in the automotive industry, with EVs. And, it's like, that's a really tough industry sector where you have this huge investment in ICE, internal combustion engines, and at the same time, you're trying to build, these plants, that are providing electric vehicles. And, so you're supporting both platforms, and that's always difficult. We've seen that, in our industry, like one of the big demise, for example, like of Digital Equipment Corporation and even of IBM, was that they were supporting so many operating systems. So you have like these, and that's almost the same kind of thing. You have these big investments in these big plants, that you have to continually feed. And then that just drains the organization, and others who don't have that can compete around you. Yeah.
Yeah. Great observation.
Yeah. So let's see. Anything else in 2024 that you're thinking? So
Well,
you're kind of doing this. You're kind of seeing, a kind of continuation of contraction, and then a bottoming it out, and then an increase happening in the second half of the year.
well, on a personal note, the things that pushing for are, of course, they're pattern related, because you know how I love patterns. I can't help it. Architects love patterns. But it's looking at the most commonly used patterns in the company, and then we're adjusting how they're shared with the overall technical community. For example, if someone wants 4 nines of availability, we'll have a pattern for that. They need 5 nines this, 3 nines this. Every pattern will have a different cost associated with
Mm.
it to maintain it, to
Yeah.
get it set up. And so this way, we're giving the development community, we're arming them with the knowledge so that they can choose something to have a level of resiliency that meets their needs, meets their customer needs.
Mm.
And this is kind of a different approach and a unique approach, because most people just grab stuff and hope for the best.
Mm.
But we actually monitor the services from the CSPs. And when you know what the availability is of the services, you can calculate holistically a pattern's availability by putting all of these things together. There's a old formula from a million years ago. It's calculates things in series and in parallel. It's called fault
Mm.
tolerance analysis. So people
Yeah.
can Google that and see how to do it. But it's basically a way of understanding a complex system. So you break down, into the individual pieces, you put them back together, and then you have a great predictor of how up will the system be.
Mm.
This was used many, many times in engineering. So go back to my original starting days,
Yeah.
used all this stuff. So kind of bringing it back together. So combining that, combining it, resiliency, chaos testing to make sure that when you design something, it really works the way it's supposed to work, performance testing, so that
Yeah.
when you're at peak loads, things are still running how you need them to run. And then the observability that brings it all together so that you have alerting when something starts to go south. So all these things are being merged into a single holistic pattern. And
Mm.
then you combine that with a reference application. So they can grab code, they can see it running, they can test out the chaos scripts, they can do all this stuff and play with it. Then when they're ready to go, they just deploy it out into a development environment and put in their business code.
Yeah.
So that's the exciting future that we're heading towards,
Mm.
where it's the push button future. A developer needs something, they push a button, they get all of this stuff automatically created for them, and they just have to add business logic. So
Yeah.
we're in a very exciting year, a very exciting time.
So it's interesting. So when I love the whole concept of patterns and design patterns, and this, so it kind of lends me into like, I think everything we've been talking about for 2024 is the way I'm processing it. It's a new business cycle around simplification.
Hmm.
So how do we simplify these really complex systems that have evolved? And complexity inflation was really rampant during 2021, 2022, and started to slow down a little bit in 2023 as we start to kind of, get a handle, on this, the massive overspend we did in cloud and also the massive build out in remote access. And so I think simplification, and we're going to be talking a lot about this during this year, but there's multiple different ways to simplify things. But you had to have a goal of why you're simplifying it. And the main goal is really to build trust in this infrastructure, right? And so simplification comes from design of organizations. It comes from the design patterns and the templates that you were just talking about. It also comes from buying packages from vendor community versus building your own stuff, like we've been talking about. Um, Learning from others within the industry about how they've approached things, so you don't kind of go out on your own and go into these cul-de-sacs, where you spend a bunch of time and money and then have to throw it away and come back. So I think this is really kind of the new business cycle. It's around simplifying this infrastructure, and what you just mentioned too, like having various different patterns for various different attributes of applications, and having kind of kind of core templates of maybe repeatable parts of applications available for the developers. That simplifies their life and also speeds up kind of time to market, for them as well. Um, Anything else you're thinking around like simplification and how that kind of evolves over the year?
Well, I agree with what you said, Nick, and I always think of things from the developer perspective.
Yeah.
For them, trust is that when they see something, it it delivers whatever it states it's supposed to deliver.
Mm.
And they want to trust that if they use something, it's really going to work for them. And they want that to be repeatable time after time.
Yeah.
And if they get something and it doesn't do what they need, then of course the trust goes away.
Yeah.
So it's so important as we all go through this process of identifying these different patterns that we work with our customers, work with the development teams, work with the business units, understand their specific requirements so that when something's created, it's not out of left field, it's not throwing it over the wall, but you know ahead of time that you're
Mm.
already meeting all their needs because you've talked to them so many times.
Yeah.
And one of the easiest way to do that is to collaborate with them. So when you're actually creating these things, they're a member of the hands-on team that's creating all this stuff.
Yeah.
So that gives them the buy-in. You get their fantastic knowledge of how things need to go. And whatever you create will be 10 times better when you take that collaborative approach of generating all these things. At
Yeah.
least I've got much better luck doing it that way.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. Like trust is huge. Like so, yeah, like from a developer point of view, but even from an infrastructure team point of view, like anyone, is that to me the key attribute of trust is repeatability. The repeatability of an outcome that you're expecting, and that's how it gains trust. And the more that that whatever it is, like it's like if you have for example, like an advisor who you're working with, who's investing your family's money, you trust them, you'll put all your money with them. Maybe not, it might be the smartest thing to do, but if you trust them over a long period of time, like trust opens up the door for a lot more engagement, and that's no different. It's a human behavior kind of thing. It's not unique to like the IT industry, but it's we seldomly have had these infrastructures and these patterns of trust. And I think that's what we're really kind of striving for in the simplification model. So I think that's really super important. And so thanks for kind of bringing up all of these different ways in which you're simplifying, in which like developers can now gain trust in the tools and the resources that are being provided to them, so that they can be successful and get the outcomes that they need in time.
And Nick, you already know what I'm about to say, but we've kind of spoiled it where I work because we've had networking patterns and automation and things set up for a long time. And
Yeah,
so that removes the toil from the developers. And we know from the industry at large, there's so many issues that happen in the networking area. So I feel so lucky that we have all that automated and it just
yeah,
works. So
yeah,
we don't experience the traditional number one problem that a lot of companies have. It just
yeah.
works for us because we have the patterns, the automation, and things are already built in to help the development community.
Yeah, yeah, that's huge, and the infrastructure should be there to help them. That's their job, is to actually deliver a service that really satisfy the developers and in turn the business, itself. Yeah. So I think maybe just one or kind of one more topic, and that's so I've been working with Andy Brown and Phil T on the launch of the AI Networking Summit, which we're going to be doing pretty soon. Andy Andy always kind of blows my mind whenever I'm talking to him. He's going to be on the podcast, in a couple more weeks. But I think he had we were all kind of thinking about, okay, well, in AI networking, okay, well then there are AI workloads. So how does networking have to address the workloads of AI, right? And what are those unique requirements? And then the discussion went towards, okay, well, also, how does AI help networking? So what about when AI, like all networking are nothing more than algorithms, and those algorithms are baked into code via protocols, so they're all computer code. How does AI, augment and improve um, all the networking protocols that we have that are important? So it's a permeation of there into that. Also on the security side of things, it's like we have to go through reams and reams, petabytes, of notification data, and trying to always like look for threats and risks, and to do instant response. So how does AI kind of work, in that? How does it, what does it mean to like cybersecurity? So we're starting to now go down to a very different way, of thinking about it. And then really it was Andy who had started to basically say, okay, well, those are two kind of interesting, or three interesting topics, but really the rubber where the rubber really hits the road, and it's in the boundary that we've been talking about. It's really around the boundary between infrastructure and developers. So how does like maybe an AI orchestrator orchestrate the infrastructure based upon all of this input coming from all of these different emitters to, from a networking point of view, provide access or provide a path for packets to flow based upon dollars of that link, based upon the security of that link, the security posture of that link, the quality of that link, the latency, of that link. That's just on the networking side, but also the, including security into that model. So it got me really just thinking totally different, about this, where kind of like if you think about, and this, I'm not sure how fast this can happen, but, as AI starts to work its way within the infrastructure itself, it's probably not too long before there are some really good orchestrators that automate a lot of that provisioning and change management that have direct support for the application. So, any thinking on that?
Well, I'm probably as excited or more excited about this than you are. You know that I did AI years ago and been following it. And so, but now things are getting to the point where they're actually usable and can
Mm,
add great benefits. And so I am hoping that this is the year where it's more than people just playing with things, but you have models that truly do help improve and optimize the way that companies work.
mm,
And The normal gotcha, of course, in AI, especially with the LLM models, is that large companies don't want their private data shared,
Yeah.
and so we have to be careful in which of the models that we use to make sure that all the things that we do are not shared publicly. But there are models that support that. And those are the ones that I'm guessing that all of the large financial companies are looking at. We're probably all looking at the same thing.
Yeah.
And the potential goals or the potential benefits are so amazing. Think of statistically, you're going to have an issue with something. The model would know that, and then it would be able to pinpoint it. It would be able to take corrective action, and it would be able to make adjustments before anything ever is affected, for any customer anywhere.
Yeah.
Now, we've had that as a dream forever, but
Hmm.
now we have something that some companies will actually implement it this year. They'll
Mm.
have things where they're the people that are out there on the edge. They're going to figure it out and they will deploy it. And
Mm.
so there are some amazing things that are coming up in order to help. We've done some things last year that were bleeding edge that helped in the financial side,
Hmm.
in different calculations and things. And so I'm anticipating that we'll have more things that we're delivering next year also, and hopeful that across industry we see more and more of this, because the more people that do it, then it'll make people hungry, and then other people will jump in.
Yeah. Yeah. That, so happy to hear you, say that, Mick, and because I think this circles back to simplification and to trust. All right. So this offers kind of AI based infrastructure or AI enabled infrastructure is a offers the promise of a massive simplification, of that, a toil mitigation, in particular, and then just being able to make, quicker decisions to maintain quality service or keep an application running, and, just happy people utilizing those applications. But then you really have to trust it to make those decisions too. So I think it's like, to me, it's like we've been going down this road of simplification, and we're building it for trust. Um, this whole AI piece now really puts that on steroids, and I think it's going to be a freaking fascinating year, coming up and into 2025, as well. It's going to be, systemically, changed. Like I'm actually at the point where I'm thinking the more and more I dive into kind of AI's impact in the infrastructure, and especially on networking in particular, is that AI represents a bigger shift and a bigger transformation than the advent of TCP/IP and Ethernet, which was in essence the underpinnings of the internet. So I think we're in for like another massive infrastructure build, but more importantly than the build, it's just another kind of massive communications infrastructure that is not just on the networking side, but and neither did the internet do. The internet basically, it was a networking technology that, when you had that and you married that with Andreessen's like Mosaic at the time, it was friggin' explosive. And I think we are now setting ourselves up in the industry for another one of those kinds of moments. And
Mm.
I don't think anyone can kind of predict what it is, but I think we're all kind of sensing it, happening, starting to happen. So,
And I think we'll see that, and I'm hoping to see a little more. You know how all the vendors say they have it today?
yeah.
Well, some are going to rise to the top. There's going to
Mm.
be a select few, and they're going to be so amazing. It might be a startup, it might be one of the established. And that's
Mm.
what I'm excited to see. Who
Yeah.
rises to the top? Who becomes the new preeminent tool that you just have to use?
Yeah.
And, at this point in time, no idea who it's going to be, but it is kind of exciting.
Yeah. For sure. All right. Hey, Mick, this was great. Thanks so much for the time. Any closing remarks before we go?
No, just thanks for the discussion, Nick, and hope everyone has a fantastic 2024.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Mick. And and measure those biomarkers, everyone. All right. All right, Mick. Thanks so much.
I'll see you, Nick.